You, Mike, for that wonderful introduction. And I do recall that special moment when I came to Temple Amuna and took on the rabbinate. And I never thought those years would be so fulfilling and so wonderful. And indeed, I am thankful for the honor that the congregation has given me to be the Rabbi Emeritus. And you are very special to me, and we miss you very, very much. I want to share with you some Torah regarding Shavuot. It is the understanding, if we read this morning, the reading very closely, that we learn from the Midrash that every Jew was present at Sinai to behold the revelation from God, to receive the Torah, a microcosm of which is the Aseret HaDibrot, which was read so beautifully this morning in our synagogue. And I might say, in all synagogues around the world. As we did this morning, we rose, standing at attention, to hear the words spoken at Sinai centuries and centuries ago. This reading, beautifully chanted, is not just any reading, because what it is a reenactment of this miraculous event. But can you imagine how remarkable this was, that this Dor HaMidbar, this generation of wilderness, who were the first in line to receive God's treasure. What a unique experience. A very unique experience. After all, Bnei Yisrael was a freed mob of ignorant slaves, not altogether prepared to receive the revelation with its thunder and with its lightning and blast of the shofar. In fact, in this parasha of Yitro, we read that the trembling people had to plead with their fearless leader Moshe, Daber ata imanu, v'nishma'a v'al yidaber imanu Elohim pen namut. Speak to us, Moshe, and we will listen, and let not God speak to us, or we will die. You, Moses, must speak to us, and then we will understand the communication. So my question to you today, on this sacred day of revelation, Matan Torah, in regard to this awesome experience, my question is, what basic needs of the children of Israel was this presentation of the Ten Commandments, the entire Torah, according to some theologians? To what basic needs was this sacred revelation directed? Was the voice of God at Mount Sinai a teaching voice, conveying the rudiments of da'at, of knowledge, necessary for a person who desires to live successfully within the framework of the learned mitzvot? Is that its intention? Or was the revelation of the Torah meant to address the will of the people, their emotional will of embracing and actually the acceptance of the notion that each Jew is obliged to surrender to God and observe all of his commandments, regardless whether they know exactly what they are? In other words, for what was the revelation intended? To provide facts or to stimulate feelings? While it is likely that there are theological ideas surrounding the theophany that took place at Mount Sinai, I would like to share with you two fundamental different philosophies regarding Torah revelation. One position suggests that knowing is the most important achievement which a human being must strive. The Greeks often refer to it as know thyself, implying that if we know the facts as to whom we are, the facts that are available to us to internalize, that alone is enough information for a human being to guarantee the ability for proper decision making and proper behavior. There is certainly a part of our Jewish tradition that agrees with that approach. Remember in Pirkei Avot? Lo am haaretz chasid. The ignorant cannot be pious. The ignorant cannot be pious. Elsewhere in the Mishnah, we're reminded, Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. The study of Torah is equivalent to all the mitzvot. And this is based on the premise that God's will cannot be fulfilled unless we know and obey the commandments contained in the Torah, the ultimate guide of action and behavior. This philosophy has given the realm of science great prominence. Ironically, it's the Rambam who makes this statement. The realm of Dat HaOlam, as he calls it, the realm of science. If people know enough about the world, posits this theory, the likelihood will be that we will live sensibly. We will be kind and succeed in creating a remarkable ecosystem. This still begs the question, however. The question, why is there still evil, intolerance, and suffering in this world, let alone in Israel and here in our own country? For it is certainly not quite anything but paradise. Perhaps knowledge, dat, is not enough. Creating and maintaining our world relies upon proper transmission and subsequent reception of the available material coming into us. And while in earlier generations, one could have been able to blame the lack of communication on distance, the inferior quality of communication devices, slowness of the ability to transfer information. In our time, there are no excuses for the inability to get your message to the desired destination, except maybe the USPS I don't want to get into that. This, after all, is the age of warp speed. And yet there is still evil. There is still corruption. There's still murder. There's still cheating. And so many other transgressions that continue to be rampant in this world. Despite the information glut and speed through which we're able to accumulate knowledge, the world is not Beseder. So maybe we have to come to the realization that not all those who know are able to communicate, and to those who do not know might be just incapable of receiving the communication. And the fact that the plethora of knowledge that is out there does not necessarily provide us with the recipe for happiness and contentment. I want to share a story with you that pastoral psychology is a famous story. When I was studying pastoral psychology with a wonderful, wonderful teacher, he told a story about a woman that was meeting with her divorce attorney for the first time. The lawyer began asking her some preliminary questions. First, do you have grounds for a divorce? And grounds, she replied, grounds, about 2 acres that will need to be equally divided between us. And then he asked, do you have a grudge of any sort? Sure, she said. Both my husband and I put our cars in it. It's connected to the house. Do you recall there being violence in the home? Well, my son has his drum set, but that is the only musical instrument that I can think of. Finally, the attorney said, why, may I ask you, do you want a divorce? And her reply, well, you see, we are having the problem of communication with one another. Silly story, but it says a great deal. Judaism agrees that communication is so important if Judaism is to survive in future generations. We have the ability to inform. Our books that are in our houses, the Mishnah, the Mikraot Gedolot, all the books that a Jewish library requires, books upon books. We have books with commentary on commentaries. We know how to communicate, we Jews. And now the miracle of all miracles. I just learned how to use Sephriah, a program on my computer that nullifies my entire library. Because I don't need my library anymore, it seems. I just go into Sephriah and I can bring up any commentary I want. Midrash Rabbah, Midrash Tanchuma, whatever I need. In philosophy, the Kuzari by Yehuda Halevi, Saadia Gaon, the middle of the 10th century. Abraham Joshua Heschel, Martin Buber, Franz Rosenzweig, whatever I want, any book, you name it, Sefer has it. And what's remarkable is that I can take that text, put it on Sefer, and I could show you the text and teach from that text. Some of it last night, I did that. So we have the new revelation. That's what knowledge gave us, the ability to bring the Torah in Sefer, and I hope you will consider looking into Sefer because you will become immediately one who stood at Sinai, and you will become truly an intelligent Jew. Technology and knowledge to get a virtual library like this, now that is Ma'amat Sinai of our hour. Now, there exists another approach to the world, however, and it is will, not knowledge. Will which declares that it is will, not knowledge, that is the most important element for transmitting the Torah and mitzvot to future generations. Please recall that at the time of the revelation, the Torah reports, Vayanu kol ha'am yachdav, vayomru kol asher diber Adonai na'aseh. All the people answered in one saying, after saying, Vayanu kol ha'am, and all the people said, Yachdav. Whatever God says, Naaseh, we will do. In fact, this declaration appears twice more. First in the verse that I just quoted, and the other found in Parshat Mishpatim. The next portion following Yitro finally brings in the intellectual component to this promise to exercise this will to obey. In Shemot 24:7, Exodus 24:7, we read, Vayikach sefer habrit vayikra ba'oznei ha'am vayomru kol asher diber Adonai, what? Na'aseh, but here, v'nishma. And then Moses took the book of the covenant and read it out loud to the people, and they said, all that the Lord has said, we will act and we will listen. And in fact, this declaration is repeated twice more. Now, this declaration seemed counterintuitive to the 10th century philosopher of Reb Saadia Gaon. And I looked it up in my Sfaria. It's interesting what Saadia says. Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will listen. He changes the Torah around. Nishma'enu v'na'asenu. We will not do and listen, but we will hear and listen. We will learn the mitzvot and we will do them, leaving the reader with the impression that we must know, then we will do. The text, however, has two declarations reversed, Na'aseh v'nishma. And I contend that calling our will to obey prior to the commitment to the accumulation of knowledge is purposeful. It is the desire, it's the will to act that is the critical part that we take away, in fact, from Sinai. In our discussion to Judaism in general, we make every day references to the will, God's will, Bezrat Hashem, to the willpower, Yetzer Hatov, Yetzer Hara. Goodwill, Ritzon Hatov. And free will, Bechira Chofshi. Motivation toward positive behavior, these expressions mean. And that positive motivation that seems to place learning secondly, making the desire to act come before the internalizing inwardly the available information. Now, dieters know about the importance of willpower. The same is true about alcoholics, gamblers, and any of us who realize the importance of acting or refraining from acting. The greatest wisdom I ever got was from my grandchildren who went to preschool. And there was an expression that every preschooler knew. And I heard it when I went to visit the classes at Temple Amuna preschool. Rabbi, you did not make good choices. Just put in any name. But indeed, that was a remarkable lesson, not for children, but for all of us. What we do with our will. If it were then that facts, the data, the manner of bringing that information into the world, and the incredible accessibility to all that material should mean a reduction in hatred, in insults, in the murder rate in the world, and would just make the world a better place. Allow me to ask my question again. What was revelation at Mount Sinai about? What was the thunder and lightning, the blast of the shofar, and the voice of God that Israel could not hear? The Rambam explains. Knowledge, the Rambam says, is not revealed, it is attained. What was revealed at Sinai was God's will, God's desire, God's wish that the children of Israel would embrace the relationship that God is offering in the covenant of binding Israel to God. And how did they respond? The first response is the real response. Na'aseh, we will do. They didn't say, as Saja would have said it, Havinonu. We understand. We want, give us the knowledge so that we can understand. No. Na'aseh, bring your willpower to the world. Mind you, our religion is not anti-knowledge. Rather, the Sinai experience is teaching us that knowledge is simply not enough. So in conclusion, there must be a will that tells us to act. A will that mirrors the will of the divine, to move in a direction in which we are able to combine our desire to obey God with the intellectual motivation to understand the hows and the whys of our faith. To bring these two passions together is to improve ourselves, our surroundings, and my prayer is hopefully our world. Amen.